Greetings ladies and gentlemen, Adrian here. Welcome back to the channel. We are talking about Fractured today, a fantasy sandbox MMORPG by indie developers Dynamite Studios over in Italy, and their game has recently entered its pre-alpha test phase for early backers. Now, Fractured, the more I research and read about it, the more interesting it gets. So if this is your first time hearing of Fractured, I'll share some information briefly about why this game is piquing my interest. Let's start with the basics. What is Fractured and how will it innovate itself to stand out from the many sandbox MMORPGs we've seen in recent times? Beginning with world building, the game wants to offer something for all types of players in this sandbox MMO through different worlds where race and alignment will play a role in changing the dynamics of the game. For starters, there are 3 races: beastmen, humans, and demons, and that determines the planet the player starts on, which in turn means to be surrounded by radically different environments and to have access to entirely different resources. Your race also changes the type of abilities, spells, and crafting recipes that are easily available to you, and those that are of a different race and on other planets will have a harder time getting these resources, which is when trading and trade routes come into play. It also changes the look and structure of the cities players can create, including what buildings they are able to erect and the NPCs they are allowed to hire. It also changes the society players live in, which dictates how they can interact with one another, particularly when it comes to hostile actions such as stealing and murdering and the consequences for those behaviors. It also changes the gods the player can pray to and how they intervene in the player's life. And finally, it also determines how easy it is for the player to travel to other planets and how well he or she is likely to be received by other races on those planets. As for catering to different playstyles, players who only want a stress-free PvE co-op environment will play as the Beastman, for example, on one world, while playing the Demon race on their world is all about the hardcore PvP encounters with full loot on death. And for players who want to dabble in a bit of both, will play as humans, so I do like the sound of that system as it allows players who prefer either of those playstyles to enjoy the game. The game worlds come with different resources too, and crafting, town building, and social interactions are important. So long-distance trade routes will require caravans and safe passage. Towns and settlements require politics, elections, and government. Your actions like murder, theft, and other things affect your alignment and how NPCs or the world reacts to you. It all sounds incredibly ambitious and attractive. For your character, what Fractured wants to do is to get rid of grinds as much as possible, so there's less of doing the same actions over again to build your character. One way they're doing that is by letting you pick your strengths and weaknesses and spend your attributes early on in the game, which allows you to instantly jump into difficult areas to play or be competitive with your friends or guild. That doesn't mean progression isn't rewarding, however. It's just that Fractured utilizes a horizontal progression system like most sandbox MMOs do, but it doesn't rely on skill prog or XP prog, so your character grows by earning and learning knowledge, and that lets you obtain new skills by completing tasks, as opposed to grinding for XP points for hours on end just to level up for new abilities. The game has, according to the devs, hundreds of abilities, so I can't confirm that until I actually play it, but there's more than enough to keep me tinkering with builds, which leads me to the next point: classes and combat. Fractured is classless, and your skills and abilities depend on how much knowledge you have, which is what we already talked about. And you do have limited slots on your hotbar to store them, which makes builds change all the time depending on what adventures you're up to for the day. Swapping them requires a fire either at a campsite or a fireplace at a tavern in town or wherever really to swap your builds. Combat is by far my favorite part. From these pre-alpha footage made public by Dynamite Studios, they've mentioned a couple of things that I really like. Firstly, combat is more dynamic instead of static, like we see in many sandbox MMOs that are inspired by old school games, so at least for me in that department, it looks and feels more engaging. Attacks and spells do have friendly fire, by the way, which is rather interesting for an MMO considering AoE attacks are a big part of those games, including Fractured. And my favorite part is this.
Even something as simple as a pond of water can become the key to overcome an enemy that would otherwise be beyond your possibilities. In this clip, for example, you can see Jacopo electrocuting some monsters through water, but he could also have decided to freeze the water in order to trap them, or even contaminated the water with poison. The possibilities really are endless.
That sounds awesome, and if it truly has environmental exploitation for combat, like some of the great games I used to play, as an example, Divinity Original Sin, where if it's raining or if enemies are standing in a puddle of water, then casting an electricity spell would make them take so much more damage, then yeah, count me in, Fractured. I want some of that, and it's something I've not seen done or done well in MMORPGs. Another feature of Fractured I want to point out is more on the technical side of things, but it's a good to know. The game is built on Spatial OS for its back-end, server hosting, and more, all taking place on the Google Cloud platform. To make it simple, this technology gives the developers more time to worry about the content rather than building and maintaining server infrastructure. It's also powerful, as it allows for a swarm of hundreds of game engines running in the cloud to co-op and simulate large worlds and the huge population of players on the world. For Fractured, that means when an item drops in the world, it stays there for years. It also makes the servers mobile and can offer closer server locations to players all around the globe. The tools it comes with also lets a small team like Dynamite experiment more with your world building, which is why in some areas of the game world, there's a mix of procedurally generated maps and terrains coexisting beside handcrafted towns and areas. It all sounds like a bunch of tech mumbo jumbo because we don't see all of that in action, I give you that, but if Fractured can pull off its living, breathing, dynamic sandbox MMORPG at launch, then this Spatial OS could be big for MMOs in the future, especially for smaller indie studios, so who knows. Anyway, this news PSA has run its course. There's so much more information about Fractured that I highly recommend you check it out if you're interested in backing the game. Head on over to fracturedmmo.com, and the pledge package is available right now, offers access to Beta 2 for 20 euros, which is the cheapest pack, and it goes all the way up to 150 euros if you want to take part in Alpha 1. And as a reminder, it entered pre-alpha at the end of November. So that's it from me. What do you guys think of Fractured? Sound too good to be true? Too ambitious? Or a breath of fresh air for Sandbox MMORPGs? Let me know in the comments below. Hit the like button for more MMO news and subscribe to the channel to get notified when a new video hits. Once again, I'm Adrian, and I thank you for watching. Hey, thanks for watching that video. Welcome to the dreaded end screen. If you want to watch more vids, you can click the cards at the bottom of the screen here and subscribe if you want to. Otherwise, guys, it's the end of the year. Have a great holiday season ahead. Enjoy your Christmas and New Year. I'll see you all when you get back. Take care.